Hello everyone, this is Vincent from the Technical Marketing Engineering team. Welcome to this session on OSCX 10.09 update for dynamic IVRL on default VRF. So let's start with the agenda of today. We are going to cover the overview of that feature, the use cases, as usual, some details of the feature by itself, the caveats for that, how to configure it, best practices, troubleshooting, and then, of course, a demo with additional resources as well. So as an overview, we propose first to have a set of acronyms that we are using. So IVRL means inter-VRF route leaking. Then dynamic IVRL is the dynamic inter-VRF route leaking that is using BGP. Contrary to that, you would have a static inter-VRF route leaking that is using static routing. Obviously, we have route tables that we are going to talk about, the FIB, which is what is programmed into the ASIC, and the RIB information, which is the selected and non-selected candidate routes for any routing protocol. So as a reminder of what is IVRF, so this is an inter-VRF virtual routing forwarding information route leaking. That's a mechanism that is used to allow IP communication between VRF and to leak IPv4 or IPv6 routes from one VRF to one or to multiple other VRF. So this can be achieved by two mechanisms. First, we use to use static IVRL with static route. So a static route is configured in the destination VRF with both the interface and the IP next hop from the source interface. So that's very important. So in this example here, we are going to leak the prefix 10.1.1.0/24 into VRF2 with the fact that the next hop is reachable. So the next hop 10.2.1.1 is reachable on the interface 1/1/1. And that interface and next hop IP are inside VRF1. And in no way you see VRF1 appearing in the CLI for this command. So that's one way, using static IVRL. Another way is to use dynamic IVRL using multi-protocol BGP. So BGP routes are exported from a source VRF with associated route target and imported on a destination VRF with import route target matching the value used for export. So this is what I show here in the below example. You see VRF1 that would export with a value that is reused in the import as the import value for the other VRF. So let's check what was the evolution in terms of releases. So for instance, 10.07, so static route leaking between VRF was already supported. You could include default VRF in that release as well. Dynamic IVRL is supported between tenant VRF. So by tenant, I mean all VRF except the default VRF. And we have no VRF route map supported to filter in or out the dedicated or specific routes in a specific VRF. In 10.08, we have the same support for static route leaking, but for dynamic IVRL, the CLI configuration has been modified and changed in order to support the new VRF for the default VRF configuration. So new configuration for default. So you could access the route distinguisher and the route target definition in the CLI. That was introduced in 10.08. However, due to some internal reason for testing, it was not supported. So we defer that support to 10.09. So the release 10.09 is exactly what has been put in 10.08, but with full qualification and support of the feature. As of before, there is no VRF route map yet supported on a VRF. What are the use cases for inter-VRF route leaking? So you can obviously exchange routes between tenant VRF1 and tenant VRF2. However, this is not so frequent. It could be, for instance, like you have some services like a DHCP server sitting in a tenant VRF, and you want to leak those routes of the DHCP server between VRF2 and VRF1. But this is not the main usage. The main usage is probably to have a services VRF that is routes that is leaked into tenant VRF, and for the return path as well, tenant VRF leaked to services VRF. So that's the main use case. So this is used for multiple services like DHCP, DNS, inbound network management and monitoring. It has been configured as well as a dedicated VRF called services VRF. Services VRF cannot be the management out-of-band VRF name, because this is dedicated for the out-of-band management port. So that is not accessible to leak any routes into. And from now 10.09, the services VRF can now be actually the default VRF. That might be very useful for migration or people that want to transition from one flat default VRF network to multiple, I would say, isolated networks with different VRF. So most services, that is for DNS, for instance, for network management, that would already be configured and residing in the default VRF might be leaked to those tenant VRF. Some details. So in order to enhance this feature and to support that, first of all, the previous configuration of tenant VRF, non-default VRF, has simply been extended to support now the CLI configuration for the default VRF. In terms of OVSDB schema change, there is none, okay, and we simply enhance the command for show running VRF and so on, to enhance and to have the ability to see what's going on for the default VRF. Only IPv4 and IPv6 address family are supported. EVPN address family or root target is not accessible for the default VRF. We can have up to 256 route targets supported in each VRF, and that's including now the default VRF context. And obviously, what we want to populate the default VRF with inside the address family, IPv4 and IPv6, this is the loopback, the connected, the static routes, the OSPF routes that are learned inside the default VRF, to inject that into the global routing table of default VRF, and then to leak that to tenant VRF, non-default VRF. This is supported on all those platforms from 6300 to CX 10,000, and that includes the simulator that I'm going to use actually for the demonstration. Some caveats. So first of all, we cannot have cascaded IVRL on the same switch. So let's consider on a switch that you have one level of inter-VRF route leaking that is supported. So that is to say, for instance, you want to leak VRF1 to the default VRF, or VRF1 to VRF2. However, on the same switch, you cannot have more than one level of inter-VRF route leaking, or we can call that as well cascaded IVRL. That is not supported. So for instance, would you like to leak VRF1 to VRF2 through an intermediate VRF that would be the default? That is not possible. VRF2 won't get routes from VRF1. So you cannot leak VRF1 to default and then link the same routes from the default to VRF2. It will not work. The multicast route leaking is not supported. There is no route map support yet for route targets inside the import and export rules. So as of due to that reason, there is no route filtering capability for dynamically leak routes. So that is also something that we have to take into consideration. So the extended community are lost through the route leaking process. So I will show you this in the demonstration. And pay attention that the total number of dynamic leak routes among all the VRF is for time being limited, validated to 16K per platform. Let's have a look at the configuration for dynamic IVRL. So we have to leak routes from or to default VRF. So we are going to use the following configuration. First, into the default VRF context, we must configure a route distinguisher value. Then we will configure an export route target. That is one instance for value associated with the default VRF. So that's one possibility, which is the best recommendation. Or you can have as well multiple instances of route target, one per destination VRF. We'll see that in an example what it means. For the import route target, multiple instances, so that is one per source tenant VRF, or one instance for value associated with the default VRF is also a possibility. Inside BGP, you need to redistribute the routes from the default VRF that are coming from other protocols like the local, the connected, the static, or SPF. You may use as well the network command, or simply receiving BGP routes from a BGP neighbor inside the default VRF, IPv4 or IPv6 address family. For the tenant VRF, that would be exactly the same symmetrical way. You need to define a route distinguisher, import and export rules, and as well having those routes in the tenant VRF coming from other protocols, for instance, or through BGP directly. The export route target value must be different between IPv4 and IPv6 address family. So that's something to take into consideration. When you have to remove the default VRF configuration, also you may see that you have the no VRF default that can be entered in the CLI. You get an error message saying that you cannot delete the default VRF. So that is on the physical platform. Pay attention, on the simulator it might be possible. So in order to remove the configuration into the default VRF, you will have to manually, individually remove and delete the route distinguisher and the address family configuration for the route target. This is an extract of a configuration that has a proposal. So this is the default VRF, VRF1 tenant VRF1, VRF2 tenant VRF2. So this is an example of setting an export route target value for the IPv4 address family. That is a :0, for instance, IS number with :0, and then importing the :1 and :2, which are defined for VRF1 and VRF2. And similarly for IPv6, where I'm using a different route target value. So this is really the linking VRF1 and VRF2 into the default VRF, and linking the default VRF routes with that export route target value into VRF1 that is importing that value, and into VRF2 that is also importing that value. So we are using BGP. Pay attention that specifically here on purpose, I didn't put any BGP peering because you don't need any peering. It's just a matter of having the routes into, let's say for instance, from OSPF, redistributed into BGP, and then using BGP protocol to perform that redistribution between VRF. So that's a way to to inject those routes, either a distribution of connected, static, or OSPF, depending on what is being used to populate the routing table. It could be as well using a BGP peering if there are BGP peers. So just a look at best practices. The route distinguisher is a must in terms of value that needs to be defined on each switch and on each VRF. It must be different on each of those switch and each of those VRF. Use a dedicated VRF route target import and export value. So among all switches, so that we have, I would say, the same BGP extended community that is used per VRF domain to define that route target. So that's a good practice. So this is reflected into that left column as a best and recommendation, contrary to the right one, which is a possibility but not really recommended. So we already cover that recommendation with a default VRF route target that is introduced and that is imported in the tenant VRF. So we have really here better control and troubleshooting due to the dedicated route target for default VRF that does exist. You have a single point of configuration, so there is no requirement for any awareness of tenant VRF on BGP peers that would be neighbor of that switch for the default VRF. So there is absolutely no need for that BGP peer to know about VRF1 and VRF2. On the right side, another possibility is to not introduce any new route target for inside the tenant VRF. So I'm not going to use a dedicated value for default VRF, but simply to export and import the same route target value and to use those as an export inside the default VRF. So this is an alternative. However, think that would you have any BGP peers on the default VRF? You will need to get those VRF route target configured as well on those peers if you want to have route leaking as well. So that's really not the best practical way of doing so. So this is why this method is not recommended. A bit of troubleshooting as a prerequisite. So we recommend, first of all, to have a topology diagram with identify switch, interface ID, and IP details for route only port, loopback, layer 3 VLAN interface. So please generate a showtech when creating a TAC case with the support. So you may also check the physical cabling and transceivers. So for instance, a show system inventory transceiver would be good to see if there is any issue with transceivers. Checking the interface state with show interface brief, and any non-zero error statistic would be helpful. Then checking about LLDP neighbor information so that you can see that there is at least some basic protocol communication over the circuits. And you may also do some ping and trace route, obvious prerequisite for troubleshooting purpose. Then to specifically troubleshoot a route leaking process, you may find informative to run a show running VRF. Then as a step 2, something that is a must, the route distinguisher must be configured per VRF and must be unique per VRF per switch, so please verify this. Then you may check that the import route target value of VRF X corresponds to the export route target of VRF Y that is targeted for import into VRF X. So that is something quite important. And similarly, in reverse, on step 4, you will check that the export route target of VRF X corresponds to the import route target of VRF Z, for instance, targeted for export from VRF X. So that is quite important. Those root target are parameters that often are configured with mistake. So check that in BGP, the corresponding routes for each VRF get redistributed into BGP. So again, like OSPF being redistributed into BGP in the corresponding VRF instance. Then you may check if appropriate and if in the scope of the design you have a BGP peering, so BGP neighbor, so with the expected peering and expected route information entering either the tenant VRF or the default VRF. You will check the routes into BGP for IPv4 and IPv6. You may check the RIB per VRF, including the default VRF. You check as well the routes, so the routing tables, what is programmed into the FIB, including the default. Then you can also check the events into the daemon that is called HP-routing that will populate the log with events in terms of what happened in terms of routing event. If there is any issue of memory or CPU, you can also do a top CPU or top memory to see if there are issues regarding CPU. And finally, if you do not find any obvious point from the previous point of troubleshooting, you can enable VRF debugging by a debug VRF all severity debugged, and you will have a debug destination buffer and a show debug buffer module VRF. So I propose now to get into the demonstration part. So in the demonstration, we have the following topology with 3 switches. Switch 1 is doing dynamic IVRL between the default VRF and the tenant VRF, VRF1 and VRF2. So the objective of this demonstration is to have a host inside VRF1 that can communicate between them. So it's the intra VRF communication that is possible between switch 2 and switch 3 through switch 1. No host in VRF1 shall be able to communicate with host in VRF2. However, we want that every host in VRF1 or host in VRF2 can communicate to the services server here sitting in default VRF. So this is pretty much the objective of the demonstration. Everything is running here as a simulator, so that is also good for you to practice if needed. So you have the ability to have exactly the same config on the simulator than on a true physical switch. So this is where we configure our port for, or let's say SVI for communicating between switches. On switch 1 configuration, we have a default VRF that we configure, VRF1 and VRF2 as well. But here the new thing is the default VRF CLI with the route distinguisher that is different per VRF, and we focus here on IPv4 address family. So we created an export route target with colon 0 and an import route target with colon 1 and colon 2 to import the VRF1 and VRF2. You see that there is a static route for VRF1 and static route for VRF2. So in BGP, inside the default VRF, we import the static. But that's nothing used here for default. Actually, what is used is the connected, because the server that we want to connect is attached to that interface as a /24. So here, the connected redistribution is the one that is important for the default VRF. For VRF1 and VRF2, what is important is the redistribution of static. Switch 2 and switch 3 have not much configuration in those. Switch 2 is just a regular L2 switch, and switch 3 we configure the VRF and we attach the transit VLAN for interconnectivity to switch 1 on those VRF as well. So the command that we are going to run are obviously the show BGP VRF VRF1 IPv4 unicast on the switch 1. All of those commands are performed in switch 1. Similarly for VRF2 and for the default VRF. So what is important to note is that we'll see in the default VRF all the routes that are populated from the BGP VRF for VRF1 and VRF2. And similarly, in VRF1, for instance, we'll see that 10.5.50.0/24 is the route for the services server. After checking the BGP, we will check the routing table, and you will see in the routing table the egress VRF that is used. So for instance, for VRF1, to reach 10.5.50.0/24, the egress VRF is the default, which is that route is coming from the default. So in order to reach that destination, we have to egress to the default VRF. Similarly, inside VRF2, the same information. However, on the default VRF, in order to enter those VRF1 subnet and VRF2 subnets, we have to egress into VRF1 and VRF2. We can check the route target which are included in as an extended community BGP attribute community, and you'll see that, for instance, inside the default BGP table, we have the route target for the subnet corresponding to the services server. So that route target is used to export and to import in over VRF. However, to the destination VRF, where that route has been imported into, we do not see any longer the extended community. So the route target value is lost during that import process. So similarly, if we want to check inside VRF1, a VRF1 subnet that is exported from VRF1 to the default VRF, we'll see similarly that extended community being lost. So this is pretty much what we want to test, and the objective again is from any host in any VRF to be able to reach out to that server here sitting into the default VRF, and from a host inside VRF1 to another host in VRF1 to be able to communicate. However, between VRF1 and VRF2, we should have no communication possible as a strict rule of security for VRF isolation. So let's get into the environment. So this is EVE-NG server. So here we can take a look at the switch one and the running config. So as I mentioned, this is a default VRF exporting with :0, and that is imported in VRF1 and VRF2. So let's take a look at the BGP inside VRF1. We have those routes, and in particular, we've got already the VRF default route that is leaked into VRF1. Similarly, for VRF2, you have as well that route that is leaked. If I check the default VRF, I simply have to remove the VRF because by default this is VRF default. You see that I will receive the route from VRF1 and the route for VRF2. Now let's take a look at the routing table for VRF1. You have, as I mentioned, a default egress VRF for the subnet corresponding to the server that we want to reach. Similarly for VRF2, we have that route as well. Let's see on default VRF. You have all the routes, and you see VRF1 and VRF2, and these are the connected transit VLAN to interconnect switch 2. So now what we can check is the route information that is inside the default VRF for BGP RIB corresponding to the server. So let's do a show IPBGP, IPv4, IPNicast, and let's take a look specifically of that route. You see the extended community that is carrying on the route target information for that route. Now, so this is inside the default VRF. If I'm looking for the same inside VRF1, you see this extended community being lost, okay, which is a normal behavior inside CX when routes are leaked from one VRF to the destination VRF, which is VRF1 here. Right, so now let's see in action what we have for communication between hosts. So let's start host A. So host A is that guy here. So I'm going to ping, first of all, from host A to host C, for instance. So I'm going to ping 119.10. As you can see, it's pinging. We have a little bit higher latency here due to the ARP mechanism. And then let's check if we can ping VRF2, which we do not want. Right, so as you can see, there is a destination network unreachable, which is expected. So we have no communication between host A and host D as expected. Let's check now that host A has capability to reach the service server. So as you can see, it can ping. Let's see if we have the same on host D, so in VRF2. We have the same capability. So now let's consider that I've got a mistake in terms of route target value, for instance, on switch 1. So I'm going to, on switch 1, if I go back to the VRF, I've got route export. So let's figure out that I'm not going to configure this. So let's check what it means. Immediately, I can no longer ping from VRF2 the server, and similarly from VRF1. Let's put it back. Now I can ping again. Okay, let's check if I forget to configure the route distinguisher. Similarly, you see route distinguisher is a must. If I put it back in the config, you have it. Right. So I hope this explains in a short way and an efficient way for you the dynamic IVRL, which is a recap of what has been done in the past, but here extended for the default VRF. Here are some resources that might be useful for you. So we have the simulator lab guide on route leaking that I was mentioning using a services VRF. Here I simply replace the services VRF by the default VRF. And of course we will have the user guide for IP routing updated for 10.09. With that, thank you very much for your attention.